Okay, we gotta talk about the Dr. Mike situation. Basically, if you didn't know, Dr. Mike is a massive YouTuber with about 14 million subs, and he makes these educational medical videos, and he generally does pretty well. Now, recently, he went on the Jubilee channel in a video called Dr. Mike versus 20 anti-vaxxers. And basically, this somehow caused a lot of drama. A lot of people are mad at Dr. Mike, and apparently this is like a whole political thing. Now, if you don't know these Jubilee videos, basically they are the most frustrating things to ever watch because they have this format where there is one expert in the middle and they're surrounded by 20 people who attempt to debate them on that specific topic. Except the way it's done is so nonsensical and annoying. First off, when a question is asked, they don't actually get to raise their hands and answer the question. They have to run to get a seat. So it doesn't matter if you have a better answer than another person. If you're slow, you're never getting to speak. Second off, anytime anyone has anything valuable to say, they will be voted off immediately. Because for some reason, to keep the video moving, they allow you to vote off the person talking using red flags. So essentially how this video went is that the anti-vaxxer will talk for about 5 minutes straight, and then Dr. Mike will try to respond, and then everybody will raise their red flags trying to vote the person off so that Dr. Mike can't have any sort of debate or discussion. So let's check out this video, see why people are mad. We'll also check out some Twitter drama and Dr. Mike fighting with some people on Twitter apparently. Now we gotta start with the main character of the video, red hair lady. The prompt here is vaccine acquired immunity is better than natural immunity, and this is what she says.
I want to say first that I'm a mother of 6 children. My oldest 2 children do have vaccines. My 3rd child, he got a vaccine that the doctor said were safe that caused him brain issues for the rest of his life, and he has arrested hydrocephalus. I want to continue to say my youngest 3 children have no vaccines at all. They're perfectly fine, they're advanced. My son has permanent brain injury, so they say vaccine immunity is better, but as a child, when I got vaccines, I ended up with spinal meningitis. I had chicken pox twice. I almost died, but my 3 children that don't have any vaccines are perfectly fine. They've been traveled over 20 states.
Okay, apparently the entire world just cursed her and she has had the worst luck ever. Suppose you believe everything she says here, and apparently the vaccines did all of this to her. This still isn't actually a scientific argument. This is like saying I went in for surgery and lost my limbs, and then saying all surgery is bad. What a lot of these anti-vaxxers don't understand is that individual cases are not a scientific argument. You need vast amounts of data from a large group of people to actually come to a conclusion. This is why scientists and researchers do clinical trials to actually figure this stuff out. You coming at Dr. Mike with this emotional sob story is not actually an argument, and I'm sorry this all happened to you, but it doesn't mean it's gonna happen to someone else. Anyway, she goes on like a 5-minute rant, and Dr. Mike just has to sit there listening to this overly emotional person who later actually admits that no matter what Dr. Mike ever says, she will never change her mind.
Did you know that every illness dated back to polio has a patent? The only thing that doesn't have a patent is the common cold. Did you know that Fauci funded medical schools to try to make the vaccine make COVID more deadly? Vaccine immunity is not really a thing because they cannot guarantee it makes anybody immune. There's more side effects from getting a vaccine than to not get a vaccine. The chances of getting illness not vaccinated versus to getting vaccines is a lot higher than somebody that doesn't eat toxic crap, practices good hygiene. They're more likely to get illness vaccinated versus not vaccinated. There's studies that show unvaccinated children are more healthier. In Japan, they don't start their vaccine schedule, I believe, until 2 years old. Autism is almost non-existent.
I love how the sidebar is just constantly fact-checking her on every sentence she says. How do you even respond to someone like this who gets every single thing they say wrong, but they talk so fast that you can't actually correct anything in real time, and if you ever try to interrupt, they'll be like, you're not letting me talk. If you actually read the fact check here, you can see that it starts at 2 months, not 2 years, so she already got that wrong, and it also says that Japanese children are diagnosed with autism, which she says that apparently never happens. If you can't even get your memorized facts right, then what are you doing here? You're not here to have a debate. You're just here to push your own agenda. And you know, I feel bad for her. Maybe something horrible happened to her and people told her nothing would happen. Unfortunately, that's the world, all right? If mommy tells you that the stairs are safe, nobody ever falls down the stairs. Everybody uses it, but you go use the stairs and you break your head and you're paralyzed for life. It must be the stairs, guys. Like, it's not the stairs.
Something I think our healthcare system doesn't do enough is say, I don't know. And I have no idea about Dr. Fauci's patents. I don't know about patents on viruses. I'm a family medicine physician. That means I work in a clinic. where people come in with either an acute complaint, something's going on with them, or they're coming in for a preventive physical where we can get ahead of things and make them healthier by preventing illness. In fact, if you think about where pharma's profits are, if pharma had to choose between preventing an illness or to treat an illness for the rest of someone's life, financially speaking, they'd probably want to just treat someone for the rest of their life.
Exactly.
But that's not what vaccines are. Vaccines prevent that illness. They prevent it from happening. And when you brought up the subject of autism, I think it's an important subject, and it's a subject that's been largely debunked by the
Not at
entire
all.
world community.
Not at all. I've seen studies that say otherwise, doctor.
All right, doctor, I've had enough of this science bullshit. I've actually seen my own studies that say otherwise. Meanwhile, fact check, doctor who did the study was banned from practicing medicine. Listen, Dr. Mike is trying to be as respectful as possible. He doesn't even pretend he knows everything. He's very respectful and says, I just know what I know in my practice, that vaccines are helping prevent diseases. I don't know specifically what you're talking about, but this is just what the data points to. Now, again, I'm not going to totally call her cuckoo because, you know, she has a right to be skeptical of things. There has been misinformation passed out about vaccines and stuff. There's been a crazy amount of censorship. Even Mark Zuckerberg admitted this in a podcast that the government was asking him to censor stuff. And that is outrageous. And people do get to be mad about that. But using that to go and discredit something we've been doing for centuries is absolutely ridiculous. You need solid data and not emotional experiences. Now she tries to argue that vaccines don't prevent any illnesses or any death ever.
As a scientific mind, you're supposed to observe everybody's hypothesis, not just Rockefeller's medical schools. And that's why I feel like you've got most of your knowledge from, and maybe you should branch out into holistic medicine, because vaccines have never been the answer. They were created to separate us from spirituality and consciousness. If you look at the ingredients, there's nothing healthy in vaccines. Formaldehyde, all types of stuff. So none of that prevents. Everybody that vaccines still get illnesses. I've never seen any prevention of anything.
The prevention from vaccines comes from prevention of death and serious illness. And we've seen that when you study that, not just in the US by the Rockefeller system that you describe, one of the largest studies in the world surrounding vaccines and autism in children came from Denmark with over 500,000 children. That is not a US system, that is not a capitalist system, and they found that there is no pattern.
That's not
so
true.
I'm trying to
Okay,
branch out as much as
I understand what you're saying, Dr. Mike. Unfortunately, that's just not true. I asked my Facebook friend Nancy, and she said you're full of BS. So if you don't mind, I'm going to continue spouting some bullshit. Listen, I feel like people have lost nuance. It is possible that vaccines help the general population, and it is possible that people in power exploit the complete trust people have in vaccines and lie about certain things to fill certain agendas, potentially make more money, and you know, big pharma is really shady and they sell you a bunch of drugs you don't need, and food companies are really shady and they put a bunch of chemicals in your food to make you sick. We all know this, all right? That doesn't discredit the entire system of vaccines. And personally, I don't like the medical system, all right? I think it's super overpriced. I think it's super unfair. I think it's super exploitative at times. I personally went through a ton of health struggles, and the doctors were kind of trying to diagnose me for like a year, and they got it wrong like 15 times. And I was like, are you just trying to make money here, or are you actually doing trial and error? It was such a horrible experience. And even after going through all of that, I don't say that all doctors suck and all doctors are lying and all doctors are evil and every treatment ever is a lie. I had a bad experience. That doesn't mean the entire system is completely corrupt, you know? Because obviously there are good doctors here who are just trying to do the right thing, and I actually think Dr. Mike is one of them. Now here she is admitting that she will never change her mind no matter what Dr. Mike says, and apparently she's here to have a debate.
How is it that he's a villain? How are we a villain if some of these vaccine creators and scientists are the ones saying we should not get it?
Is there anything I could say today that would change your mind?
I'm just asking your opinion.
I'm asking you a question.
Probably not, because I actually read and study.
Well, if I can't change your mind,
I just want to know your opinion.
Yeah, so I would like to give you my knowledge, my experience, and what I've seen in the hospital system. But if you're telling me right now, no matter what I say, you're not going to change your mind, is there any value to that?
Well, I like to study everybody's opinion. I don't like to just say, I believe this and not further investigate everybody else's opinion.
Okay, didn't you just completely contradict yourself? You said, I don't like to say I believe this and not investigate other opinions, but also I'm not going to change my mind ever because I do my research. Embarrassing. You're completely closed-minded and obviously don't want to learn anything, and people are rightfully making fun of you. Now here we got another guy who is, for some reason, unable to grasp simple statistics.
If someone shares a very, let's do it this way. I think this is a very visual and easy way to understand it. If there are 2 streets to cross to get to the other side of the road, and I've run 1 million people through this trial, and I saw that the sidewalk on the right is much safer than the sidewalk on the left, or the street on the left. And someone starts spreading misinformation that the right sidewalk is actually so deadly, and they saw someone die and it was brutal, and they make it very powerful, and they start convincing people to cross on the more dangerous sidewalk. I would say that they're being a villain by telling people to go on the other side of the sidewalk, and they're also a victim because they may have been misled by someone who shared a very scary story.
Understood. So what would be an example of the misinformation that you're referring to?
Like that vaccines cause autism.
So they don't cause autism, you're saying?
Correct.
At all?
Correct.
Well, that's news to me. Okay, what about death? Doesn't the vaccine save lives?
Correct. It lowers the death rate. It doesn't prevent it 100%.
Okay, so why are people dying?
Because it's not 100%.
So why are people dying? Oh my god, dude. Doctors are not gods. They cannot prevent death 100%. It's like they don't understand that you can't have a perfect world where absolutely nobody dies ever. Every single sort of intervention or drug or vaccine is going to have some places where it goes wrong, where it doesn't work as intended, where it has adverse side effects. That doesn't mean it's not working. That doesn't mean you get to throw away the whole thing. If I flip a coin and get 5 heads in a row, does that mean my coin is broken? Like, no, I just got lucky, all right? Usually, you'll get the 50-50 result. Sometimes things don't go your way. Listen, I'm not going to completely discount them. I think people in power need to be questioned, all right? You need to question the medical system, these big companies, the vaccines, the big pharma, everything needs to be questioned, but it needs to be questioned with actual data and statistics. Obviously, there's a lot of money there, and there are going to be a lot of bad actors. You can't really believe everything someone tells you, and people do have an agenda. But in general, for the past few centuries, vaccines have been considered very safe, and they have immensely helped society. To deny that is completely ridiculous.
But reality is, majority of the people who were dying were vaccinated people.
Correct, because most people were vaccinated.
Dr. Mike has unlimited patience. I would have walked out immediately at this level of stupidity. Now, Dr. Mike tries to explain how he just tries to go off the data and the scientific studies done, and then he says that, hey, you know, some of this stuff will be proven wrong later, and that's kind of how science advances and stuff like that, but you can't act right now when the data isn't there to support it.
Yeah, I think everyone in this room has been very charitable in speaking with me, and I actually really appreciate it. I'm here volunteering my time to try and just share what I've learned, my experience, my knowledge, what I would do if I was facing a dilemma with vaccinating my future child. And my goal is just to share the most accurate information, because when I started in healthcare and I was a resident and I was in my training, the amount of negative things people were doing to their health, like a lot of the metabolic things that you've discussed, like the lifestyle choices, were largely due to other people misinforming them or making miracle promises.
Like almost like doctors saying cigarette smoke is actually good for you?
Exactly. In fact, everything that we're doing in healthcare right now, like 50% of it over the next 100 years will be found to be ineffective, or there's going to be something better.
This guy did bring up a good point that, okay, you know, doctors are not right about everything. In the past, doctors have said smoking is good for you, and who's to say they aren't wrong now? Who's to say we aren't all being lied to? But the thing is, the way stuff like that was disproved was through data and scientific studies, not random emotional studies from 1 or 2 people. Now, some people get really crazy and basically say that every single scientific study everywhere by every doctor and researcher is bought and paid for by evil governments who want to keep us sick, so you can't trust any of the studies. And in that case, I mean, you're just cooked, right? Like, why bother even trying? You kind of have to believe that's not the case if you want to function in society, because if everybody's out to get you, I mean, they probably already poisoned your food and water, you know? You stand no chance.
100 years will be found to be ineffective, or there's going to be something better.
And we'll go back to nature, right?
And some of it will go back to nature. Like, going back to nature sounds really good, but there's also a little bit of a fallacy in that. So like in
Oh my god, stop nodding your head. She's so annoying, man. They're finally trying to find common ground, and you just can't stand it. You're not even there and you're annoying. Holy.
nature, people walk barefoot, but we don't choose to walk barefoot because we don't want to get tetanus infection from the floor and get cuts on our feet. There's
And all of these chemical-induced floors that we're putting, all of these bleaches, these things that are
exactly forever chemicals in our watch bands.
But grounding is a thing. Earthing is a thing that has proven to help with
So
cancer.
how do we balance a healthy lifestyle of being outdoors with modern science? And I am very passionate about one thing that I feel like is lost in modern healthcare: the body's ability to heal itself.
Yes. Amen.
Dr. Mike is so nice, man. He's just trying to find some common ground here, even though he doesn't completely agree with these people. He's just trying to bridge the gap here. He wants to inform people correctly. And, you know, he understands that people are mad at all these evil companies, you know, making us sick and selling us drugs we don't need. The thing is, you can acknowledge this stuff and also not go completely tinfoil hat, you know? Now he gives a really good analogy here about seatbelts.
And I think that sometimes we envision so much more control than what we actually have. Like, for example, do you think wearing a seatbelt saves lives?
It can, yeah, for sure.
Has it ever saved yours?
No.
Have you worn it all the time or majority of the time?
I have not worn it all the time,
But
but
majority
I
of the
could
time.
see.
You
Yeah,
regularly
yeah.
wear it.
Yeah, for sure.
Does that mean it was stupid to have done so?
No, not at all. But I think the
That's
seatbelt
how
is now
I
risking my life as a vaccine would be risking
So there's
my
some
life, right?
people that believe, like anti-vaxxers believe vaccines are harmful without great evidence, that seatbelts can cause you to get trapped and et cetera, and
You're
actually
saying
cause more problems.
anti-vaxxers believe that?
No, I'm saying like anti-vaxxers
okay.
believe negative beliefs about vaccines that are not
I
well
see.
proven. Some people say that about seatbelts. Some people say that the world is not round and they believe it to be flat.
Now, can you compare vaccine skepticism with really seatbelt skepticism? Like, do you think that that really weighs,
I think
especially when
the
people have
principle-
been injured from vaccines? This is a real thing that
People
has
have been injured by seatbelts.
I understand. So I'm going to give somebody else the time, but you know, my claim is pretty much that RFK is standing up for a lot of different things that are going on in this country right now that are causing more damage than COVID.
I would love for someone else to stand up for those things as opposed to RFK.
I think
but
you
we
do
agree
as well,
with it.
right?
Yeah.
See, this is how you politely disagree. Obviously, they didn't agree in the end or anything, but they're at least still smiling and had a decent discussion, unlike Red Hair Girl or any of these other bozos. Then there was another prompt, anti-vaccine lies cost lives, and essentially this woman is describing another sort of like tragedy that happened.
I just had a baby, 7 months old. And, you know, my baby, I was like, no, I'm not getting any vaccines. The doctors came in, they made me feel like a very bad mother for not doing that, right? I was very pressured. And then I had a family friend who had a baby at the same time, was a few months in, gave vaccines to the baby, and the baby had seizures and has had seizures since. And I've also had a friend who I went on a mission trip with, and this pastor was totally healthy, two young girls, and this pastor literally got a heart attack out of nowhere, and the only thing was he took the vaccine, and there's many cases like that.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the birth of a 7-month-old. The fact that anyone made you feel bad in the healthcare system, I feel like is a failure on us in the healthcare system, so I'm sorry that happened to you. In healthcare, it's very difficult to predict the future. When we see two things happen simultaneously in healthcare, sometimes we think they have caused one another. But unless we see a pattern of that happening over and over again on a large scale,
Right.
it's more likely that this is just a coincidence of things happening at the same time.
Okay, so that's a pretty reasonable explanation. He comes at her with a ton of empathy, understanding why she feels the way she does, and he just explains like, hey, this might be a coincidence, and until you have more data, you can't say this is definitively why it happened. Now, obviously, if it happens to you, you are going to feel that way. Like, if I get jabbed and the next day I have cancer, I mean, it's going to be hard to not be anti-vax, you know? Like, if that specifically happens to you, it's going to be pretty tough. But the thing is, you need more data there. If 1 million people get jabbed and they all have the same thing happen, then yeah, it's probably a jab, you know? So you need, like, statistics there. Now, just look how they try to raise the red flags anytime Mike is trying to make any point ever.
For example, I have a friend of mine who's a physician who vaccinates children very regularly. And they were about to give a child a vaccine, and before giving the vaccine, the child had a seizure. They went on and had more seizures throughout their life and ended up actually dying at a very young age because of a seizure disorder. But the vaccine was never given. Had that happened 2 minutes later, what do you think would have been in the mother's mind and in the father's mind in that situation? Other than,
Yeah, bro, let's raise those red flags as soon as he makes a good point, so he has to shut up. Like, what an absolute bozo. If you're not here to have an open mind and actually hear opinions that are not of your side, then what are you even doing here? Now, unfortunately, the woman he was talking to is also completely cuckoo. Apparently, she wants to get vaccinated by Jesus.
She talks about how this is the way to heal the world, is through the natural medicine of God. God gave us everything that we needed. The reality is, if we don't get vaccinated with Jesus, we will face God on Judgment Day. It's not just about health. It's about freedom of speech. It's about the government's trying to kill us.
All right, guys, I had it all wrong. All right, let's throw away science, flush it down the toilet. We all need to just get vaccinated by Jesus, whatever the hell that means. Jubilee has a talent for just finding like the most cuckoo nut jobs. Here's what people are saying. Notice how whenever Dr. Mike talks, everyone shakes their head and rolls their eyes. But when the skeptics are talking, Mike nods and listens. You can't change the mind of people who argue with emotion. I'm sorry, did you not get vaccinated by Jesus? Only thing I'm taking away is that Dr. Mike's incredibly patient and gentle in his speech. Yeah, like he could have made so many gotchas, so many viral clips making fun of like stupid people and stuff like that. But no, he just wanted to come at them with empathy, and he understands why they might think the way they did. Vaccines work so well that people forgot what the world looks like without them. This is what I've been saying. Like, people have no idea. You were just so privileged that you don't understand how life was like before vaccines. Spoilers, you'd probably be dead to some flippin' disease. Anyways, Dr. Mike apparently got into a little bit of drama on Twitter as well. I would ask Dr. Mike, what are the stats on babies who have seizures just before getting a vaccine versus babies who have seizures right after getting a vaccine? What are those numbers? Because I can promise you one far surpasses the other pretty substantially. Dr. Mike responds, the more valuable questions to ask for comparison would be, what are the rates of seizures after getting the vaccine versus what are the rates of seizures after getting the vaccine preventable illness? But you're not 100% exposed to the illness. If you take the vaccine, you are 100% exposed to the vaccine. Correct. And do you wonder why we aren't exposed to as many vaccine preventable diseases? Likely from vaccines. Even in an outbreak, you are less than 100% at risk to exposure. With the vaccine, you're at 100% at risk to exposure of vaccine injury. Risk-reward calculation is likely different for all people. You realize, though, risk-reward analysis, chances of someone getting encephalitis from the MMR vaccine, 1 in 1 million. Chances of someone getting encephalitis from measles, 1 in 1,000. And this can be shown through most reactions and conditions that arise from vaccine versus illness. These are the same people whose kids will die from a treatable violent virus or illness, and they'll go, the measles wasn't that bad. They got over it pretty quickly. Don't do the shots. There's doctors that can help with measles. They're not as bad as they're making it out to be. I feel like it's crazy that people think the entire world is in some sort of operation, because this is not a US only thing. Vaccines exist outside of the US. So if you think the government is corrupt or whatever, you'd have to think every government in the entire world is corrupt. And they're not even talking about one vaccine specifically. They're talking about all vaccines in general, which is completely stupid. Like, at least if you pointed to one vaccine and said, hey, this particular complication is not adding up, maybe you would have more of an argument. But you're saying every vaccine ever. It's been there for centuries. There's been a ton of data on this. Like, it's literally saved society. Okay, then we got this person citing a bunch of doctors you should listen to. And then Dr. Mike responds, these are your preferred vaccine experts? The vaccines can make people magnetized. They can put a key on their forehead, it sticks. They can put spoons and forks all over them, and they can stick. God, we're so cooked. That is right. He also responds to a bunch of people saying, I don't really get frustrated because the topic is complex, emotional, and scary, but there's much fear mongering out there. I just wanted to share what I do and don't know. I hope that came through. Somebody posts a clip and says, on God, I would have fried her. And Dr. Mike's like, I really just wanted us to agree on something, even if it meant that we could never agree on anything. I swear Dr. Mike's just a nice guy, man. But anyways, let me know what you guys thought about all of this. Click this video for more content. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.